Welcome back. I'm Austin Westfall, a live look at the U.S. Capitol on this Friday evening, 9:18 in the nation's capital. Today was the final day of the National Transportation Safety Board's 3-day hearing on the deadly plane crash at Reagan Airport that took the lives of 67 people in January. And in fact, the hearing is still going on as we speak. They are still up and at it. We do know that the NTSB chairwoman there, Jennifer Homendy, we just saw her for a moment, taking part in this hearing. And as I said, it continues to this hour. If you want a quick recap of everything that's happened so far, let's go out to Fox's Caroline Shively. She has a recap of what we learned in the past 3 days.
Federal investigators still looking for answers in a fatal crash outside D.C. 6 months after an Army Black Hawk helicopter and an American Airlines jet collided, killing 67 people. The National Transportation Safety Board held a public hearing on the crash this week.
This is day 3, the final day of our investigative hearing of the fatal mid-air collision.
The Army pilot was flying above the 200-foot limit over the Potomac River near Reagan National Airport on January 29th, possibly due to a faulty altimeter when it collided with the landing aircraft.
Pathfinder is CRJ.
On Friday, investigators focused on the bigger picture, the technology and anti-collision systems at the nation's airports.
As aircraft get closer to each other in a terminal environment, these systems tend to have fairly large rates of undesirable alerts.
The airspace around Reagan National is one of the most congested in the nation. Pilots there and at other busy airports have reported receiving false alarms warning of mid-air collisions.
We become desensitized to the alert. The alert ceases to be an alert.
The Federal Aviation Administration is in the process of modernizing the nation's aging traffic management systems piece by piece.
We really need to be able to make sure that we've got the appropriate fleet equipage that can actually do this at the appropriate times versus just certain aircraft.
A final NTSB report on the crash is due out early next year. In Washington, Caroline Shively, Fox News.
All right, so standing by to discuss more of what we've learned so far from these hearings, Randy Klatt is here. He's with the Foundation for Aviation Safety. Let's put it in plain English. What's your main takeaways from the past few days?
Thanks for having me tonight, Austin. Well, I don't think that there was any earth-shattering news out of these hearings. We've got a few more details. We have a new reconstruction of what occurred with an animation. We've got a few more details about the altimeter situation inside the Black Hawk. But fundamentally, most of that information was in the preliminary report that came out in March. It's a sad situation where 2 aircraft were put into a difficult situation. As with all mishaps, there's always a chain of events that take place. And in this one, it's no exception to that. There were a lot of things that occurred, and unfortunately, they all linked together and ended up in this collision. It's been reported that the helicopter was about 78 feet above the 200-foot limit for that helicopter route. Some analysis of the data shows that altimeter may have been off by that 70 to 100 feet. So that could certainly be one of those links in the chain that led up to this. But we have lots of other issues going on here with air traffic control, congestion, failure of the FAA to note the 15,000 loss of separation incidents that took place over a 3-year period. There's a lot going on here that will need further investigation and some corrective action for sure.
So did we learn that there were proposals to move the helicopter route before the crash?
Indeed, there have been proposals to do that. There have been a lot of employees that have spoken up to say this isn't really working very well, that this is a hazard. When you consider that many, those weren't near misses. I think they're down to, the documents show about 85 near misses. That's within 200 feet of vertical separation and 1,500 feet of horizontal separation. And that's a lot over a couple of year period. So it was well known that this was an issue. There was some testimony from a local medevac helicopter unit that was talking about how nervous they are flying around there, and particularly with the military helicopters in the same airspace. So it wasn't anything that surprised people, I don't think. It's a tragedy that should have been avoided. This data was known. If the FAA had it, which they did, the NTSB should have had it. We should have been screaming to the maximum amount to get this fixed before something like this occurred.
I read that the controller guiding both aircraft had basically said that he was overwhelmed with his responsibilities at the time. Are air traffic controllers being overwhelmed more common than we might think?
It is a very high pressure job, as you can imagine. And with the chronic shortages of air traffic controllers that we've seen not just in the last few years, but really for decades, we have a very long training pipeline. It takes several years to actually fully qualify a new air traffic controller. The dropout rate through that pipeline is fairly significant. And at the end of the day, you hire a few thousand. By the end of the year, you might have added 50 or 30 controllers to the workforce that are actually qualified. And that's just not keeping up with the demand. So yeah, I'm not surprised. And that particular evening, he was actually working both helicopter and airline traffic to DCA. So he's got dual responsibilities. The theory there is it was later at night, traffic slows down and one controller could handle it. But clearly that wasn't the case here. The traffic was called twice. So there are a couple of issues here that are pertinent. That the helicopter was told twice about the CRJ circling to land, and twice the helicopter pilot replied that he had the traffic in sight. What didn't happen was the traffic was not pointed out to the approaching CRJ. So the airliner didn't know that there was a helicopter in that vicinity. It wasn't told by air traffic control anyway. And they were circling to land. You're 200 to 300 feet off the ground or above the river in this case. You're in very short final. You're focused as a pilot. You're focused on your airspeed and your lineup with the runway. And the last thing you would expect is another aircraft to cross your path just at that point.
Reading some other details here that we've learned, the Army helicopter had a barometric altimeter that gave an inaccurate reading, and a locator system aboard the Army helicopter was not working at the time. Where does the story go from here, Randy? Are we looking for the NTSB's next release of information? Or is there something else that we're looking ahead to? Are they doing anything to prevent this type of accident in the future?
Well, that last question is the most pertinent one. Obviously, we've had this tragedy. We can put together the pieces, but the big picture is that the system failed here. Granted, the helicopter pilot in command was responsible to separate himself from other aircraft. He was flying visual flight rules. That's the task at hand. That didn't happen, but it was a setup in a lot of ways. Had that aircraft been at 200 feet, the maximum altitude allowed, instead of 278, obviously they would have missed the airliner by 78 feet. I mean, that's just completely unacceptable to set that sort of route up and expect it to operate safely for years and years without doing anything about it. So there was a lot of issues that need to be dealt with. They have closed portions of that route now. They say permanent closure. So perhaps that small section of one airport has been fixed, at least for the time being. But we still have thousands of other airports. We have thousands of runway incursions and near misses all over the country. When you consider how much air traffic there is, 45,000 flights a day, 3 million passengers a day in this country, flying into the same number of airports that we had in the late 90s. It's been over 25 years since the last airport was built. So it's a system under stress. And unfortunately, the FAA, for various reasons, has really failed to address that margin of safety that's getting slimmer and slimmer as we continue to operate. And if we continue to ignore the warning signs, more things like this are unfortunately going to happen.
Randy Klatt is with the Foundation for Aviation Safety. We appreciate the informative interview. Take care.
Thank you very much, Austin. Have a good night.
You too. So we're going to slide away for a quick commercial break. Lots more news to get to, though. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be joined by the former commissioner of the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics in